Well, President Tshisekedi is doubling down on his call for his Rwandan counterpart to face international sanctions over his alleged support for M23 rebels. Tshisekedi made the appeal at the Munich Security Conference this Friday, where he denounced Paul Kagame's, quote, expansionist ambitions in the DRC and called for him to be blacklisted.
The integrity of a country be violated like this. Its people massacred without the country responsible being sanctioned. This raises the question of the United Nations, which for me has become a two-tier organization, depending on whether you are among the powerful or privileged countries or whether you are among the weak and disadvantaged.
Well, Tshisekedi says he won't attend this weekend's Africa Union Summit. Finding fresh solutions to the conflict in Eastern DRC is high on the agenda for the meeting. The heads of member states from across the continent will be gathering in Addis Ababa for the 38th edition of the summit. Chances for a breakthrough during the meeting are slim as M23 rebels advance in the region. Meanwhile, Rwanda's leader, accused of backing them, has vowed to, quote, spit in the face of anyone punishing him for his actions. Well, let's get some analysis on this now and bring in Désiré Assogbavi, who is a political analyst, and he joins us now from Addis Ababa. Great to have you on the program, Désiré. Thank you so much for joining us. So we know that there's been an emergency meeting today ahead of these summits this weekend. Tshisekedi wasn't there, but he is pointing the finger at Rwanda and he's calling again for those sanctions against Paul Kagame. Do you see that happening?
Unfortunately, we haven't seen much progress so far. As you said, conflict situations are very high on the agenda of the summit that is happening now. And as we are speaking, the Peace and Security Councils of the African Union have just have their meeting. We are expecting more pressure from African head of states on the protagonist of the conflict. On our view, there is no military solution possible for that conflict in the DRC. It is important that pressure amounts on all the protagonists to go back to the negotiation table. Unfortunately, it's not happened yet, and we are expecting this summit, even beside the meeting of the Peace and Security Council of the Union that happened today, we are expecting that the whole assembly of the Union, composed of all member states, would be able to exert much pressure on all the players within that conflict.
So do you think that pressure will be a game changer? Do you see this summit really being where a breakthrough happens in terms of stopping the conflict in the DRC?
It is our hope anyway. And more we have head of states or countries of the continent speaking in one voice, towards those protagonists, the player of the conflict, there's a hope that they might listen, because in any way they're going to need, their peers of the continent, to support them. It is important to insist on the importance of negotiations, and there is no military solution possible. But it is also important to mention that whoever around the world, all partners of Africa who could have any influence on the protagonists of the conflict should come in the game. Again, we are expecting and we are calling for local solutions, but it is important that all kind of solutions are envisaged, including solutions coming outside of the continent.
Well, Désiré, you mentioned that you were part of those discussions today, just ahead of the start of the summit this weekend. Give us a feel of what we can expect from the summit.
So basically, by tomorrow, we are expecting that the communique or the decisions out of the Peace and Security Council will be out. And we are expecting maybe a feedback from the protagonists of the conflict, to react. It is also important to mention that at this summit, the African Union is going to elect the new leadership. And it is expected that at the level of the Union, the president of Angola might become the chairperson of the African Union. And because he's already involved in the conflict, we are expecting that he'll be able to continue the process, the talk that he has started on behalf of the African Union, together with what we call Nairobi process with President Ruto, to exert more and more pressure on the protagonist. So we are expecting that out of this summit, something positive might come out.
Désiré, thank you so much for joining us on the program. It was great to get your insight. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.